All right, ready to dive into some financial engineering today? We're cracking open. So this is Financial Engineering by Kizzi Nkwocha.
Yeah, this book's really something. Kizzy takes a topic that could be pretty dry, all the numbers and formulas, and makes it, well, surprisingly approachable.
Definitely. So we're not going to get bogged down in jargon today. Think of this deep dive as your express lane to understanding the core principles of financial engineering, the stuff that really matters.
Exactly. It's about giving you the knowledge to make smart financial decisions, whether you're already playing in the market or just starting to dip your toes in.
Now, Kizzy doesn't hit us with complex equations right off the bat. He starts by explaining why understanding the time value of money is so important. Like, imagine you win, say, $10,000 today. You could invest that right and potentially double it in 10 years, maybe even less.
There you go. That's the magic of compound interest, a key idea Kizzy keeps coming back to throughout the book.
It's like having that $10,000 today is way more valuable than getting it years from now purely because of the potential growth.
Exactly. And Kizzy factors in inflation too. 10 grand a decade from now won't get you nearly as much as it does today.
Time really is money, huh?
Absolutely. It affects just about every financial decision, from how you look at investments to comparing loans.
Speaking of investments, Kizzy uses a really cool analogy to explain the whole risk and return balance. He compares low risk, low return investments to a calm lake, peaceful, sure, but not much action.
Right. Then you've got your high risk, high return investments, more like sailing on rough seas, huge potential, but also the chance of, well, capsizing.
And where you choose to sail all depends on your appetite for risk.
Yeah. 100%. Understanding your own risk tolerance, whether you're all about smooth sailing or chasing those big waves, is absolutely crucial.
Now, this is where things get interesting, because Kizzy then introduces the idea of using different financial instruments, kind of like a sailor choosing the right ship for their journey.
And just like a sailor needs to know their vessel in the waters, financial engineers got to understand their tools, what they can do, how they work.
We're talking stocks, bonds, and then there's that whole other world of derivatives.
He does a great job of demystifying those, showing how each one can be used strategically.
So starting with stocks, Kizzy reminds us that when you buy a stock, you're basically buying a little piece of a company, right?
Right, you become a part owner. And that ownership comes with potential benefits. If the company makes a profit, you might get dividends. And if the stock price goes up, boom, capital appreciation.
He uses this company XYZ, as a real-world example of some crazy capital appreciation. Their story really makes it click. What was it about them? Why were they so successful?
Well, they had these super innovative products, a strong management team, and investors clearly saw their potential. The demand for their stock just went through the roof, and so did the price of each share.
Wow, that's incredible. But Kizzy also makes it clear that the stock market isn't a guaranteed path to riches.
Definitely not. There's always risk. Stock prices can be all over the place. He really stresses the need to understand market dynamics, do your research, and have that long-term perspective.
Not a get-rich-quick scheme, that's for sure. More like a marathon. Okay, so what about bonds? They seem a little less, I don't know, chaotic than stocks.
They are. With bonds, you're essentially lending money either to a company or the government.
And in exchange, they promise to pay you back the principal plus interest over a certain period, right?
Exactly. And Kizzy breaks down those different types too. You've got government bonds, like treasury bonds, often seen as the safest. And then you've got your corporate bonds.
Right, and with corporate bonds, you're depending on the company to actually be able to pay back that debt.
Precisely. And that's where those credit rating agencies come in. They look at creditworthiness. Higher rated bonds are seen as safer, so naturally they usually have lower interest rates.
And then you've got the lower rated ones, sometimes called junk bonds, riskier, yeah, but also the potential for bigger rewards.
It always circles back to that risk-return balance we talked about. It's about finding that sweet spot that aligns with your financial goals and how much risk you're comfortable with.
Okay, so we've got stocks, which are about ownership, and bonds, which are more like loans. Now, how about we unravel the mystery of derivatives?
Ah, yes. Derivatives. They get a bad rap sometimes, but Kizzy does a fantastic job explaining how they work, how they can actually help manage risk.
So instead of being intimidated, think of them as powerful tools. You just got to know how to use them.
Exactly. And he lays out some really clear examples.
Like that one with the farmer and the corn futures. That one really clicked for me.
Right. The farmer is worried about the price of corn dropping before they can harvest, so they use this futures contract to lock in a selling price today for a delivery later on. Protects them from potential losses if the market takes a dive.
And on the other side, a food company, let's say, could use a similar contract to protect themselves from prices going up unexpectedly.
Exactly, a win-win for both sides, mitigating that risk. Now, Kizzi points out that futures are just one type of derivative. There are also options which give the buyer the right, but not the obligation, to buy or sell something, an asset, at a certain price.
Options seem pretty flexible, but I bet they can get complicated pretty quickly too.
They can, for sure. But Kizzi breaks them down in a way that makes sense. He explains how companies use them for things like employee stock options.
Right, giving employees the option to buy company stock in the future, but at a price that's set today. Nice way to incentivize and reward employees.
For sure. He also explains the different types of options, like call options, which gain value as the asset's price climbs, and put options, which gain value as the asset's price drops.
So you've got options for when you think the price will go up, and options for when you think it'll go down. Makes sense.
And then we can't forget about swaps, another type of derivative. They involve exchanging one stream of cash flows for another, which can be super helpful for managing things like interest rate risk.
Like trading in one loan payment for another, maybe getting a better deal or just reducing risk in the process.
You got it. Kizzi gets into the nitty-gritty of different swap types, but the main takeaway is that they're another tool in the toolkit for handling financial uncertainty.
Okay, so we've covered stocks, bonds, and now derivatives. That feels like a really solid foundation for understanding the world of financial engineering.
It is, and Kizzi doesn't stop there. He takes us beyond these basics and gives us a peek into some of the more advanced ideas he covers later in the book.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right? We're talking financial modeling, behavioral finance, all that good stuff.
You got it. It's not just about the mechanics of finance, but also how human behavior plays into it and how the pros use data to make those big decisions.
He even touches on the ethics of financial engineering, which feels more important than ever.
Absolutely. With these powerful financial tools, there's a responsibility to use them ethically for the greater good.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, explored the basic financial instruments, and now we're ready to venture deeper into the world of advanced financial engineering.
You know, one of the things that really brings Kizzi's book to life is how he uses all these real-world examples. Remember we were talking about company XYZ before?
Yeah.
The one with the incredible capital appreciation?
Oh yeah, definitely. Their stock performance was off the charts. What was it about them that made them so successful?
Well, they were growing like crazy, launching these innovative products, and investors definitely took notice. As more investors jumped in, that demand pushed their stock price higher and higher.
And their management team seemed to be on top of their game as well.
They were firing on all cylinders. And as investors saw the company's potential, the demand for their stock just went through the roof, pushing the share price higher and higher. It's a classic example of how investing in a company with strong fundamentals can lead to those impressive long-term gains.
It's a great story, really shows how that growth potential plays out. But Kizzi also brings in that reality check. Past performance isn't a guarantee for the future, right? It's not just about finding the next big thing, but about having a solid strategy.
Exactly. It's not just about finding the next big thing. It's about approaching investments strategically.
So diversification is key, not putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
100%. Kizzi really emphasizes that a balanced portfolio can help you ride out those market swings, those ups and downs that are always going to happen.
Makes sense. Now, I got to ask about another example that stood out, the story about Sarah, the trader. It felt like something out of a movie, you know?
Sarah's story really shows what happens when you combine that gut instinct with hardcore financial engineering.
She was already a successful trader, right? But she hit a wall, couldn't seem to break through.
Right. She'd been relying on traditional methods, her own instincts, which had gotten her pretty far. But then she discovered financial engineering, and it changed everything.
Like she unlocked a secret level or something?
Exactly. She started incorporating things like option pricing models, risk management strategies, all those tools we talked about earlier, and her profits went through the roof.
Wow. It really shows that anyone, no matter their background, can benefit from understanding these principles.
Exactly. It really shows that anyone, no matter their background, can benefit from understanding these principles.
Speaking of making these concepts accessible, I really appreciate that Kizzi doesn't shy away from the more advanced stuff. He dives into things like financial modeling, which has always seemed kind of mysterious to me.
It's like getting a behind-the-scenes look at Wall Street. Kizzi breaks down how financial models are used in the real world, how those complex spreadsheets can be used to analyze all that financial data, make predictions, and inform those big investment decisions.
It's like having a crystal ball, but instead of magic, it's powered by data and algorithms.
Exactly. Kizzi really emphasizes that understanding financial modeling is becoming more and more crucial in today's data-driven world.
And it's not just about crunching numbers. He also digs into the psychology behind finance, those behavioral biases that can trip up even the most experienced investors.
Absolutely. He talks about herd mentality, that whole following the crowd thing, and loss aversion, where the pain of a loss feels way stronger than the joy of an equal gain. These are things we all do, these human tendencies that can lead us to make irrational decisions about money.
It's crazy how our brains can play tricks on us, especially when it comes to money.
It's true. And Kizzi gives us the knowledge to recognize these biases in ourselves so we can make smarter choices.
So we've got the technical tools of financial engineering. We're starting to grasp these more advanced concepts. And now we're adding this whole layer of understanding about human behavior and how we make decisions.
Like putting together a puzzle, each piece adds to the bigger picture.
Exactly. And speaking of the bigger picture, one thing I like is that Kizzy doesn't just focus on Wall Street and those big-time investors. He brings it back to personal finance, makes it relevant to everyone, whether they're managing their own investments or just trying to make smart money choices in their everyday life.
Exactly. He talks about setting financial goals, whether it's buying a house, retiring comfortably, or taking that dream vacation, whatever's important to you.
So those goals become your compass, right? Guiding those financial decisions along the way.
Exactly. And Kidzi points out that to reach those goals, you often need a plan. In other words, a budget.
And I like how he makes budgeting less scary. It's not about cutting yourself off from everything fun, but making conscious choices that line up with your priorities.
He's big on tracking your income and expenses, figuring out where you can cut back, then putting your money toward those goals we talked about.
It's like giving your money a job, right? Sending it where it matters most to you.
Absolutely. And he stresses that it's never too early, never too late to start taking control of your finances. It's all about building those healthy habits that'll serve you well throughout life.
So we've gone from the basics, stocks, bonds, and derivatives to exploring those more advanced concepts like financial modeling and behavioral finance, and now we're bringing it all back down to earth, empowering ourselves to make smart money decisions.
And that's what makes Kitzi's book so powerful.
Yep.
He takes all this theory, these complicated concepts, and gives you practical knowledge, tools that anyone can use to navigate the world of finance, no matter where you're starting.
It's about demystifying finance, making it approachable and saying, hey, you've got this, you can take control of your financial well-being.
Exactly. And one of the most compelling parts of the book is how Kidzi explores the ethical side of financial engineering.
Which is so important, especially these days. It's not just about making profits, it's about using these powerful tools responsibly.
Exactly. Kizzi really digs into the importance of transparency, integrity, and putting your clients and stakeholders' interests first.
It's about using financial engineering to create a more just and sustainable financial system, one that benefits everyone.
He talks about bringing those ethical considerations into everything you do, whether you're designing financial products, managing risk, or making investment decisions.
It's recognizing that financial engineering has real-world consequences. It doesn't exist in a bubble. And those in the field have a duty to act with integrity and think about the greater good.
And he doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. He acknowledges there have been times when financial engineering has been misused, and that's led to crises and caused real harm. But he's still optimistic, arguing that by promoting ethical behavior and building a culture of responsibility, financial engineering can be a powerful force for good.
It's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Innovation and responsibility, pushing the limits of finance while keeping the system sound.
Exactly. And Kizzi gives real-world examples of both the positive and negative impacts of financial engineering, encouraging readers to think critically about these issues.
It's like he's starting a conversation about the role of finance in society and empowering individuals to demand more ethical and responsible practices from the institutions they interact with.
Now, let's shift gears a little and talk about the career paths you can take in financial engineering. I'm sure a lot of listeners are curious about that. Kizzi gives a great overview of the different opportunities out there.
It's a field that never sits still, always changing, and new roles popping up all the time.
He talks about those traditional paths, like being a quantitative analyst, or quant for short, working at a big investment bank, hedge fund, or asset management company.
Those are the folks designing those complex trading algorithms and risk management models we've been talking about.
That's them. They use their math skills, coding skills to analyze all that financial data, find those hidden patterns, and make those split-second trading decisions.
Sounds pretty intense.
Oh, it can be. But it's also exciting and rewarding, especially if you love a good challenge and digging into massive amounts of data.
What about someone who's interested in the more strategic side of finance? Are there roles for them in financial engineering?
Absolutely. Kizzi talks about roles like financial strategist, where you're using those modeling skills, your analytical chops, to advise companies on mergers, acquisitions, raising capital, all those complex moves.
So less about the day-to-day trading, more about those big picture decisions.
Exactly. And Kizzi also points out the growing need for financial engineers in tech. I mean, companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, they're all using financial data and algorithms more and more.
It's wild how those worlds are blending together these days.
It is. And Kitsy also emphasizes how the skills you build in financial engineering are super transferable. It's a very versatile career path.
So even if you don't end up on Wall Street or in Silicon Valley, those analytical, problem-solving, data-driven skills are in high demand pretty much everywhere.
You got it. And he encourages folks to think outside the box when it comes to careers in financial engineering. There are so many entrepreneurial opportunities in this space, too.
It's not just about working for the big guys anymore. You could create your own path, develop new products, new services, disrupt the industry even.
Exactly. And he's a big advocate for networking, building connections with other professionals.
Going to conferences, joining those industry groups, reaching out to people you admire for advice and mentorship.
He stresses that financial engineering isn't just about formulas and numbers on a screen. It's about people, collaborating with others, building a community of like-minded people who are passionate about using finance to make a positive impact.
I really like that message. It's about recognizing that finance isn't just a way to make money, but a powerful tool that can be used to address some of the biggest challenges we face.
Exactly. And Kizzi highlights examples of financial engineers who are doing just that, whether it's through microfinance initiatives to make financial services available to everyone, or creating new investment products that support sustainable development.
Using financial expertise to build a better future. Love it.
Now, before we move on, let's circle back to that intriguing question about how financial engineering principles might shift when you apply them to the dynamic and, let's be honest, often unpredictable world of emerging markets.
It makes you think outside those traditional applications of financial engineering and consider the specific needs and opportunities of these rapidly growing economies.
And throughout our conversation, it's been clear that emerging markets have their own unique characteristics, so you can't just approach them the same way as developed markets. Financial engineering needs a bit of a makeover for that.
So what are some of those key things to keep in mind? Kizzi talks about the regulatory environment in a lot of emerging markets, how it can be less developed, more prone to change, which makes things both risky and exciting for potential investors.
You might have more freedom to innovate, but there's also that increased uncertainty. You have to be okay with a little bit of a Wild West environment.
It's like navigating uncharted waters. You might stumble upon amazing new opportunities, but you also need to be ready for those sudden storms.
You got it. And that's where risk management becomes even more critical. Githy points out that those traditional risk models, the ones that work in stable markets, might not cut it in these environments. You need something more agile, more adaptable.
So it's not just about plugging numbers into a spreadsheet. You have to really get the bigger picture, understand the local context, the politics, the economic forces that can create volatility.
Absolutely. And that often means finding local experts, people who get those nuances, who can guide you through those complexities.
Blending that global expertise with on-the-ground knowledge.
Exactly. And we can't forget about those infrastructure challenges that often pop up in emerging markets.
We were talking about that earlier, things like limited access to reliable data, financial institutions that might not be as developed, even spotty internet connection. Those are all hurdles.
For sure. Those are all things that can impact how financial engineering happens in these places. Sometimes it's not about using the latest, most advanced tech, but about coming up with creative solutions when you don't have a lot of resources.
Being resourceful, thinking outside the box, and figuring out how to make things work, even with those limitations.
Exactly. And Kizzi really emphasizes that you can't underestimate the importance of culture in emerging markets.
That's so important. We can't just take a financial product or service that works somewhere else and expect it to automatically succeed in a different culture.
Right. Values around money and risk, those deeply held beliefs, vary a lot from culture to culture. Kizzi talks about how crucial it is to really understand those cultural nuances before you even start designing a financial product or service.
It's about respect. finding those bridges between different ways of thinking about money.
Absolutely. And this is where that human side of finance comes back in. It's not just about the numbers. It's about getting people, their motivations, what they're hoping for.
And speaking of understanding people, Kizzy dives into behavioral finance in emerging markets.
Which is fascinating because all those behavioral biases we talked about before, those quirks in our thinking that mess with our financial decisions, they can show up differently in different cultures.
So it's not just about understanding those biases, it's about how they might be stronger or weaker, depending on the cultural context.
Exactly. And Kizzy gives some really cool examples of how those behavioral insights are being used to design better financial products and services in emerging markets. Well, one example is nudges. These are like subtle cues that encourage people to make better financial choices without limiting their options.
So instead of forcing people to do something, you're just gently guiding them in the right direction.
Precisely. You're tapping into how people think and behave and using those insights to design solutions that are effective and culturally sensitive.
So we've talked about some of the challenges of financial engineering in emerging markets, the regulations, the infrastructure, those cultural differences, but let's not forget about the incredible opportunities.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're talking about markets that are growing at an insane pace. Innovation is off the charts. There's a real sense of optimism, a feeling that anything is possible.
It's like the Wild West of finance, a chance to really shape the future.
That's a great way to put it. And Kissy does a great job highlighting some of the key areas where financial engineering is poised to have a huge impact in these markets.
Like what? What are some examples?
Well, one area is microfinance, which is all about providing financial services to low-income individuals and communities, people who are often excluded from traditional banking systems.
It's about empowering those individuals,
Yeah.
right? Giving them the tools to lift themselves out of poverty.
Exactly. And Kizzy talks about how financial engineering is being used to design these innovative microfinance products, microloans, micro savings accounts, microinsurance, all tailored to the needs of those communities.
Using finance to create opportunity, level the playing field, that's fantastic.
And then there's the whole impact investing movement, which is gaining traction in emerging markets.
Right. Impact investing, where investors are looking for both a financial return and a positive social or environmental impact.
Exactly. Kitsy talks about how financial engineering can be used to structure these impact investments, direct capital toward projects that address some of the world's toughest challenges: poverty, inequality, climate change.
It's about using finance as a force for good, like we were saying earlier.
Exactly. And we can't forget about technology. It's a game changer when it comes to financial inclusion and innovation in emerging markets.
Right. Technology has the power to break down those traditional barriers, make it easier and more affordable to get financial services to the people who need them most.
For sure. Kissy talks about the incredible rise of mobile banking in these markets. I mean, now all you need is a cell phone, and you're plugged into the financial system. You can manage your money, make payments, even access credit. It's amazing.
It's like putting the power of finance in everyone's hands.
It really is. And Kitsy also digs into the potential of blockchain technology to revolutionize financial services in these parts of the world.
Right. Blockchain, that's the technology behind cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. A lot of people think it has the potential to make financial systems more transparent, more secure, more efficient.
It does. It has the potential to reduce fraud, cut down those transaction costs, and really open up access to financial services for people who've been left out.
It's like building a whole new financial system from scratch that's designed to be more inclusive.
Exactly. And Kizzy also talks about artificial intelligence and big data, how they're being used to improve credit scoring, customize financial products, even detect fraud, all in emerging markets.
It's like bringing these cutting-edge technologies to the table to solve real-world problems.
Exactly. And Kitsy's very clear about the challenges we need to bridge that digital divide, make sure that everyone has equal access to these game-changing technologies.
We can't leave anyone behind. Everyone deserves access to these opportunities.
Absolutely. Now let's zoom in on the world of investment banking, a field often seen as the ultimate application of financial engineering.
The world of big money, high-stakes deals, billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Exactly. And it's a world where financial engineers are essential.
Kizzy gives a really interesting look at this world, explaining how investment banks use financial engineering to advise companies, raise capital, and, of course, manage risk.
He talks about how they guide companies through mergers and acquisitions, help them find buyers or sellers, negotiate those deals, and secure the necessary financing.
It's like they're playing a high-stakes game of chess, each move carefully calculated.
You could say that. Kizzi also explains how investment banks help companies go public through IPOs, initial public offerings.
That's when a company first sells shares of its stock to the public, right?
Exactly. It's a way for them to raise capital, fuel their growth plans.
And investment banks are there every step of the way, valuing the company, structuring the IPO, marketing those shares to investors.
They also help companies raise money by issuing bonds or other debt securities.
It's about being the bridge between companies that need money and investors who are looking for the right opportunities.
And Kizzi's clear that it's a tough business, really competitive. You need a unique blend of analytical skills, business savvy, and people skills to make it.
It's not just about the numbers, it's about reading the markets, building those relationships, and having the guts to make those billion-dollar decisions.
You got it. And Kizzi also addresses the ethical side of investment banking, especially given what went down during the financial crisis.
That was a wake-up call for sure. It highlighted the importance of responsibility, ethics, and transparency in finance.
It did. And Kizzi talks about the need to rebuild trust in the financial system, to use these skills not just for profit, but to create a more stable and sustainable economy.
Using finance to make the world a better place, not just to make a quick buck.
Exactly. And he also gives some practical advice for those who are interested in pursuing a career in investment banking.
Like what? What does it take to break into that world?
Well, he talks about the importance of a solid education. That's key. Then building a strong network, and of course, developing those critical skills. You got to have the chops.
It's not just about what you know, it's who you know and how you use that knowledge.
Right. But he also emphasizes that passion. You got to love finance. You need that intellectual curiosity, that drive to learn and grow, and a strong work ethic, because it's not a 9-to-5 job, that's for sure.
It's demanding, but it can be incredibly rewarding too. I think it's interesting how Kizzi emphasizes that financial engineering isn't just for Wall Street hotshots. It's something that everyone can benefit from understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's a big advocate for financial literacy, understanding those basic financial concepts so you can make informed decisions.
It's about taking control of your financial future, making smart choices with your money.
Exactly. And he offers practical tips on managing your personal finances, from creating a budget to saving for retirement to making smart investments.
It's about empowering people to take control, not just relying on others to manage their money for them.
And he also stresses the importance of seeking professional financial advice, especially for those bigger, more complex financial decisions.
Finding a financial advisor who gets you, understands your goals, your risk tolerance, your values, someone you can trust.
Exactly. As we've been talking about all these different facets of financial engineering, one thing's for sure, it's a field that never stands still. It's all about innovation, adapting to new technologies, and finding new ways to create a better future.
It's a field that's pushing boundaries, exploring new possibilities, and using finance to make a positive impact.
Absolutely. And as we move into the final stretch of our deep dive, we'll see how financial engineering is being applied to tackle some of the world's biggest challenges, from expanding access to financial services to combating climate change.
It's about harnessing the power of finance, using it as a force for good, a way to create a more equitable and sustainable world. Okay, so we've covered a ton in this deep dive already, from the nuts and bolts of financial instruments to those high-level concepts like financial modeling and even the psychology of investing.
And Kizzi really takes us beyond Wall Street, He shows how these principles can be applied to everything from personal finance to tackling those global challenges.
Absolutely. So let's bring it all home. We talked about how those financial engineering principles might need to adapt when we're talking about emerging markets. It's one thing to talk about risk and reward in a stable, developed economy, but emerging markets, those are a different beast.
Totally. And Kizzi gets into those complexities. He really digs into what makes financial engineering in emerging markets so interesting and, often pretty tricky.
So let's unpack some of that. We touched on the regulatory landscape earlier, how it can be a bit, unpredictable in some emerging markets.
Right. Those regulations might be still developing, changing quickly, which can be both risky and exciting, more room to innovate. But you also have to be comfortable with a lot of unknowns.
Like sailing without a map, right? You might find amazing new places, but you got to be ready for those unexpected storms too.
Exactly. And that's where those risk management skills are even more important. Kizzi talks about how the risk models that work in stable economies might not cut it in these environments. You need a more, flexible approach.
So less about plugging numbers into a spreadsheet, more about Really understanding what's happening on the ground, the political landscape, the economic forces that can really shake things up.
Absolutely. And that often means teaming up with local experts, people who live and breathe those nuances, who can help you navigate those complexities.
Combining that global expertise with that local know-how, that's key.
100%. And then there's the infrastructure piece, which we touched on earlier. A lot of emerging markets don't have the same level of infrastructure that we take for granted.
Right, things like reliable data, developed financial institutions, even consistent internet access. Those can be big hurdles.
For sure. Those can all impact how financial engineering plays out in those markets.
Mm.
It might not always be about implementing the latest, shiniest technology, but finding workarounds, being resourceful, making things work with what you've got.
Adaptability, resourcefulness, those are essential skills in those environments.
Absolutely. And Kizzi reminds us about the importance of culture, especially in emerging markets.
So true. You can't just assume that a financial product that was a hit in one country will automatically translate to another culture.
Exactly. Values about money, risk tolerance, those deep-seated beliefs, they can be really different. Kizzi talks about how vital it is to really grasp those cultural nuances before you even think about designing a financial product.
It's about understanding those differences, finding ways to build bridges between them.
Exactly. And this is where that human element we keep coming back to is so important. It can't just be about the numbers. You have to get people, their motivations, their aspirations.
And on that note, Kizzy digs into the role of behavioral finance in emerging markets.
It's fascinating stuff because all those behavioral biases we all have, those little quirks in our thinking, they might show up in different ways depending on the culture.
So a strategy that plays on a certain bias in one market might completely flop in another.
Exactly. And Kizzy gives some really interesting examples of how they're using those behavioral insights to design more effective financial products for these markets.
Like, what are they doing differently?
One example is nudges. These are subtle things, ways to encourage people to make better choices with their money without limiting their freedom to choose.
Like a gentle push in the right direction, not a shove.
Exactly. It's about understanding how people think and behave in that specific context and using that to design solutions that actually work.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the hurdles, those unique challenges of financial engineering in emerging markets, regulations, infrastructure, cultural differences. But let's not forget about the incredible opportunities.
Oh yeah, for sure. These are markets that are exploding with growth. Innovation is happening everywhere, and there's so much potential, it's contagious.
It does feel like a wide open frontier, a chance to really make a mark.
Exactly. And Kizzy highlights some of the areas where financial engineering can have a huge positive impact in these markets.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, microfinance is the big one. That's all about providing financial services to those who've been excluded from traditional banking, giving them a chance to build a better life.
It's about empowering people, giving them the tools they need to lift themselves out of poverty.
Exactly. And Kizzy talks about how financial engineering can help create innovative microfinance products, loans, savings accounts, insurance, specifically designed for those communities.
It's about using finance to level the playing field, create opportunities where they didn't exist before.
Right. And then there's impact investing, which is becoming more and more popular.
Right, where investors are looking for both a financial return and a positive social or environmental impact. Doing well by doing good.
Exactly. Kizzy talks about how financial engineering is being used to structure these impact investments, to funnel money towards projects that are tackling those big challenges like poverty, inequality, climate change, you name it.
It's all about making a difference, using finance as a force for good in the world, like we were saying before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about technology. It's a game changer in emerging markets, making financial services more accessible and fueling innovation.
It really does feel like it's breaking down barriers.
Totally. Kizzy talks about the explosion of mobile banking in these markets.
Right.
I mean, now all you need is a cell phone and you're plugged into the financial system. You can manage your money, make payments, access credit. It's pretty amazing.
It's like putting the power of finance right into people's hands.
It is. And he also talks about blockchain technology. That's the tech behind cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. A lot of people think it has huge potential in emerging markets.
It does seem like it could be a game changer, creating systems that are more transparent, secure, efficient. That's what's needed in places where trust is fragile.
Exactly. And Kitsy also talks about how artificial intelligence and big data are being used in emerging markets. Things like improving credit scoring, making those financial products more personalized, even fighting fraud more effectively.
It's like taking those cutting-edge technologies and bringing them to bear on the issues that matter most.
Exactly. It's a really exciting time to be involved in financial engineering in emerging markets. There's just so much potential to make a real difference.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of financial engineering, I'm struck by the power of these tools, but also the responsibility that comes with them.
I agree. Kizzy's book is a great reminder that financial engineering isn't just about making money. It's about using our skills to create a better future for everyone.
It's about using these models, these algorithms, these instruments to solve real-world problems. We can use them to create opportunities to build a more just and sustainable world.
And we have to be willing to keep learning, to adapt, to hold ourselves to the highest ethical standards.
Because the future of finance is being written right now, and we all have a role to play in shaping it. So whether you're a seasoned pro, a student just starting out, or just someone who wants to understand the world a little better, never stop learning. Use your knowledge to make a difference. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.